Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing a top 10. Topic of this top 10? Top 10 real theme songs. And what I mean by that is, these are wrestlers that have used established pop songs or top 40 songs or whatever you want to say it is, top rock songs, as their theme music. So it's not something like, let's say, Cody Rhodes, who uses Down Straight song that they made specifically for him, or it's not something like Jim Johnson or CFOs have put out. This is something that was a song that was a hit at some point somewhere separate from wrestling. With that being said, I'm going to grade this by the wrestler, how great the song fit into their gimmick, and how successful the whole package was. I won't be playing any of the music because I don't feel like being demonetized, but if you do want to hear these songs, I have made a Spotify playlist with all of these songs, plus some more in there that I think are really great wrestling theme songs. Some of them licensed, some of them not. I'll put it in the description for you to go to. That being said, let's go to number 10, Handsome Jimmy Valiant with The Boy from New York City by Manhattan Transfer. A lot of you younger fans and a lot of people that may not have seen Jimmy Valiant when he used this theme may not know how great it was for him and how much it fit his character. Valiant, to me, if he had a modern day equivalent, it would be like Juice Robinson. Just an over-the-top, somewhat crazy, somewhat eccentric, somewhat weird gimmick. And the song just fit him so well. It was kind of a weird song, kind of an eccentric song, kind of a silly song that worked for Jimmy Valiant. I think Jimmy Valiant and Boy from New York City, they just fit together like hand in glove, in my opinion. That's why they're on the list. I'll go from that, our number 9. It's been disputed that this was the first theme song for wrestlers. I've heard many people say it is. I know Gorgeous George used Pomp and Circumstance before that, but this was supposedly the first time rock and roll was brought in, and you may know it already by me explaining it that way. The Freebirds with Freebird by Leonard Skinner. Now again, you may know better the Bad Street USA song, which is really cool theme song itself, but for a whole lot of their career, the Freebirds would come out to Freebird, because obviously, and it fit with them. These were guys from the South that talked trash, that could back it up, that liked to party, just like Leonard Skinner. It almost was an anthem for them in Southern rock itself, like Leonard Skinner was for their generation. It immediately let you know who the Freebirds were. It immediately tied them to where they're from, what they're about, and it was ultra successful. One of the great tag teams of all time, or factions, however you want to view them. Just a fantastic song with a fantastic team, in my opinion. Freebird for the Freebirds. I'll go from that, our number 8. I promise I won't do too many of these on this list, but Man in the Box by Alice in Chains for Tommy Dreamer. And I've already made a list of top 10 ECW theme songs, which is why I tried to stay away from putting too many of these on this list. However, you can't deny this. I mean, it just fits with him so well. And the theme he uses in Impact or TNA right now is kind of derivative of it. His WWE theme was derivative of it. So he's always basically used Man in the Box. And Alice in Chains is my favorite band of all time. And I can't think of this song without thinking of Tommy Dreamer, who obviously is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. It's just, again, a perfect match of who he is, the era he's from, because Tommy Dreamer, to me, even though he's wrestled more outside of ECW than he ever did in ECW, he is the heart and soul of ECW. And he is a guy that carried the flag and still carries that flag to this day. And ECW, to me, when I think ECW, I think the 90s. When I think the 90s, I think grunge music. When I think of grunge music, I think of Alice in Chains. Just a perfect song for one of my favorite wrestlers. It works so well. I'll go from that, our number 7. The Midnight Express with Chase by Giorgio Moroder. This was a funky, sleazy, disco-esque pop song that fit a team that was funky and sleazy and kind of flashy like a disco song would be. Kind of gaudy like a disco song would be. And it's just so classic, it's so good. And I even love the homage that FTR is using now, that they have kind of a similar sound-alike song to it. But that original Chase, that original Giorgio Mojo Moroder, and how it came out, how they came out to it. It instantly set who you were seeing. Again, much like I said with Valiant, much like I said with the Freebirds and Dreamer, you knew the Midnight Express were coming out because they were the only team that used a song like this, and it just fit them perfectly. They look like the kind of guys that would listen to this kind of music, Jim Cornette included. Just a fantastic song, hence why it's on our list. I'll go from that, our number 6, the Junkyard Dog with Another One Bites the Dust from Queen. Yet another one of my favorite bands of all time, which probably may be why it's on here. But you can't think of Junkyard Dog, especially his Mid-South run, without thinking Another One Bites the Dust. And it's just perfect. It's Queen at their funkiest. It's got that throbbing bass line. It fits in perfectly, Biting the Dust, Junkyard Dog. It's got a groove that you can dance to or bob along to, which you would see him do during the match or even walking out to the ring. The whole package of the Junkyard Dog, especially in Mid-South, was so great and it works so well. I really enjoyed this, and again, it's a great song by one of my favorite bands, so that's why it's here on the list. And going from that, our number 5, for CM Punk, Cult of Personality by Living Colour. CM Punk has had some great theme songs, whether it be the Killswitch Engage song that he used in WWE prior to this, whether it be this, which he's mostly well known for, whether it be when he used Slayer South of Heaven, or AFI's Misery Cantera, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong. I don't think I've ever heard it pronounced properly. They've always fit with what he was doing at the time. But the one song that I think is synonymous with CM Punk is Cult of Personality. Because CM Punk, he is the Cult of Personality. This was a perfect song, a perfect match. Again, it so much explains who we're looking at. When you listen to the music, it's braggadocious, it's over the top, it's basically talking about him, whether it's talking about him as a heel directly or who he's rallying against as a face. It fits him exactly. I love this song. And Living Colour, in general, a very underrated band. One of the great bands of that late 80s, early 90s era that I don't think a lot of people really go back and listen to a lot of their other stuff. They have some really, really great music. Their other big hit of the time, Glamour Boys, is really, really good, and I'm trying to think of other songs in my head now. With Spotify now, it's so hard to remember the names of songs because they're just playing from a playlist. It's not like you're looking at the back of a CD or a cassette or a record and reading every song off of there and having to go up and change it. You can put a playlist on random and you may not know any of the names of the songs. But I digress. Just a great song from a great band for a great wrestler. I'll go from that, our number 4. Speaking of great wrestlers, the late great modern day warrior Kevin Von Erich, coming out to Tom Sawyer by Rush. This was another one that fit him perfectly. I mean, his nickname is in the song, it's the beginning of the song. And Rush is such a weird and different band that worked just perfectly with Kerry Von Erich. You wouldn't think it would. You would think something like ZZ Top, which I think he did come out to a ZZ Top song at parts of his career. But you would think someone from Texas would come out to like ZZ Top or like a Jimmy Vaughn or something to that effect. And then he comes out to Tom Sawyer and it just fits perfectly. As time rolls on, there's a lot of fans that don't realize just how big the Von Erichs were and how big Kerry Von Erich was. I mean, we're talking about a former NWA World Champion when the NWA World Champion meant you were at the pinnacle of wrestling. A former Intercontinental Champion when it meant that the Intercontinental Champion was the second guy, or the second most popular guy in WWF or WWE now. A guy with himself and his brothers who carried a company on his back for a decade. And I think way too often we're overloaded with the depressing and negative aspects of the Von Erich family. I think we need to look at some of the great things that they did and some of the great music that they had with them. This was just a fantastic song. Great wrestler. Rest in peace, Kerry. You were great. I absolutely loved watching Kerry Von Erich when I was a kid. I was super excited when he came to WWF because that meant I got to see him more often. Just a great wrestler. Now going from that, our number 3, The Road Warriors and Iron Man by Black Sabbath. If you watched wrestling in the 80s, there are very few things that were as menacing as hearing those first bars open and hearing, "I am Iron Man." And then the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors coming out and just raising hell, absolutely running roughshod over anybody that stood across the ring from them. One of the greatest tag teams of all time one of the great heavy metal bands of all time in Black Sabbath, arguably the first heavy metal band. And much like Black Sabbath in music, the Road Warriors were copied by so many different people. So many people took inspiration from them. This again was just another perfect fit, a song that instantly was recognizable, a song that most of the people watching knew at the time they started using it. It was about a 10-year-old song, so it wasn't like it was some obscure Black Sabbath song. It was one of their more popular ones. Just a fantastic entrance, one of the most menacing things that you would have seen at the time. I absolutely loved it. Now going from that, our number 2, a sometimes foe of the Road Warriors, the Rock and Roll Express with Rock and Roll is King by ELO. To this day, if you speak to a certain part of the country, the Carolinas, the Mid-South area, Memphis, and you ask them who the greatest tag team of all time is, they're going to tell you the Rock and Roll Express. They're absolutely going to say that they're the best tag team, they were the most fun to watch, they had the best matches. Ricky Morton's probably the best seller in the history of wrestling. Robert Gibson was no slouch himself. These guys were both fantastic. And Rock and Roll's King is just so perfect for them. Again, it fits much like Freebirds and Freebird. You have the name of the team right in the song name. It was so perfect. When you would hear this, it was almost where you couldn't hear the theme song, because as soon as the first bars of it came on over the PA system, the women screaming was so loud that it would drown it out. And go back and watch some of those old Crockett tapes from the era and just listen to the response to the Rock and Roll Express get. They're one of the most over acts, whether it be a tag team, whether it be a singles wrestler, in the history of wrestling. Just a fantastic song for a fantastic tag team. Now before we get to our number 1, we do a thing here called the Best of the Rest. Basically, it's for things that didn't quite make the list, but they were considered for it. First up, I know, I gave the disclaimer already, Natural Born Killers by Dr. Dre and Ice Cube for New Jack. This tied into New Jack so well. They would play the song, and most of the times his match would be started and ended before the song was even over, so they never even cut it off. It would play all through his matches, which is why if you go watch one of New Jack's matches on Peacock or the WWE Network now, and they got that crappy dubbed over, I don't even know what to call it, but it's a terrible rap song. It takes so much away from the presentation. The beat, the rapping, the fact that it's Dr. Dre and Ice Cube, half of NWA on a song that's playing while New Jack is committing copious amounts of violence to a song called Natural Born Killers, and if his match went long, they would just play it again. And sometimes you would hear it 2-3 times if he had a longer match. One of the most complex and interesting characters in the history of wrestling. I absolutely love New Jack, and I love the song, hence why it was thought of for the list, but didn't quite make it. Now, last but not least, on the Best of the Rest, we've talked about a lot of tag teams here. This is another one, The Fabulous Ones with Everybody Wants You by Billy Squire. They also use Sharp Dressed Man, which is a great song. I love that ZZ Top song. But to me, I talked about the fit with the team. Everybody Wants You fit this team, the Fabulous One. And you younger fans, you may be looking at this picture here, and you may say to yourself, Everybody Wants You doesn't fit with that image. Well, let me tell you, your mothers or your grandmothers, depending on how young you are, or if you're my age or older, your wife's sisters, if they lived in the Memphis area and they seen those two guys come out, those two guys drove them absolutely crazy. The only thing that you could compare that to, or the level of insanity that they created within the women in the fan base, it would be comparable to Beatlemania. And yes, this is not hyperbole. This is actually how big they were and how much of sex symbols they were within that demographic. So much so that there were times where more of the crowd was women than men, because the women came there to see those two guys. Which now when you hear Everybody Wants You, makes a whole lot of sense, doesn't it? Again, another song that perfectly fit with the team, but didn't quite make our top 10. Now before we get to our number 1, if you think I put a song too high, put a song too low, left the song off here altogether, let me know down here in the comments. While you're there, smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. If you see where it says join, that's how you become a channel member. Becoming a channel member definitely helps us out. With all that being said, our number 1 real theme song, Sandman with Enter Sandman by Metallica. And I know, again, I gave the disclaimer, assume you can't get more perfect than the combination of the Sandman and Enter Sandman. I have seen tons of wrestling videos, tons of talk about Sandman, where they just say he was a guy that swung a cane and had an entrance. I've heard the argument be made that the Sandman's entrance is just as good, if not better, than the Undertaker's. And now I might be biased here, but I can tell you this. I've seen Undertaker wrestle twice at WrestleMania and come out with his appearance. And I've seen him at other shows, whether it be the Ministry era, whether it be the early era, whether it be the American Badass era. I've seen The Undertaker make many appearances, many entrances, and they were all great. And The Undertaker is great. This is not knocking him. I have never in my life seen anything that gave me goosebumps just on an entrance as much as hearing Enter Sandman in the ECW arena with the Sandman coming out and every single person in that crowd singing every one of the lyrics along with the song. I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it. You're probably not going to see it, but look, my hair is standing up on my arm. It's probably not being picked up on the camera, but just thinking of those moments, and I've seen it quite a few times. And I've seen him other times in ECW where he took it outside of the arena and it wasn't quite the same. It was still really awesome. But for that moment, that entrance in that building with that wrestler, it was absolutely perfect. I can't think of anything better. I couldn't think of a song that more fit with the wrestler, whether it be a real theme song or one that was made by a wrestling company. This was 1,000,000% the greatest entrance I've ever seen, and it just fits. It's just perfect. Much like I said with New Jack, if you go back and you watch and they've overdubbed it with some generic rock music, it takes so much away from the Sandman character. Because that crowd participation, that song, I mean, it's one of the great songs of all time. Every time a top 100 songs list comes out, it's on every single one of them. Like I said, the absolute perfect song for the perfect wrestler in the perfect company for him. With that being said, if you made it here to the end, let me know what your favorite real music theme song is. Put it down here in the comments. My name is George Coles, and this has been another Heel Heat Top 10.